right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Karen Ripley. I'm an entomologist with the U.S. Forest Service in Portland, Oregon. And although I see there's many participants from beyond Oregon and Washington, the West Coast is pretty much the focus of my talk. And rather than looking at a formal list of prioritized pests, I just thought about what are the most important forest insects and pathogens that you might be interested in hearing about. The first one the first insect to highlight is the spongy moth. This insect was formerly called the gypsy moth, and its close relatives are called the flighted spongy moth complex. The spongy moth is Lymantria dispar, and then all these relatives of it are varieties that behave very similarly to the original spongy moth that's found introduced and established in the eastern United States, except that their food, their host plants include conifer trees. In their native range in Asia, they feed on Siberian larch, and the female moths can fly. So that makes them an even higher risk, especially to forests on the West Coast. The Department of Agriculture has a very aggressive, very successful program for detecting spongy moth, and we benefit from that, and it's one of our highest priorities. Not only if this voracious caterpillar were to get established in the U.S. or on the West Coast, would we see forest damage with intense defoliation, when it would also tend to be an urban or suburban pest as well. And we could anticipate that there'd be huge increases in the amount of pesticides that are used by people to fight it. There are sometimes pesticides used by the Department of Agriculture to eradicate known infestations, but generally they're less toxic versions and they're carefully applied. When homeowners go nuts about a new caterpillar in their neighborhood, you don't often have that kind of confidence in their decision making. I thought I'd talk about a couple of diseases, and I think on April 4th, Marianne Elliott is going to give a talk about invasive diseases, but just to mention a couple of big ones, white pine blister rust is a priority in forest management on the West Coast. Its hosts are 5-needle pines such as western white pine, sugar pine, and white bark pine. And there's been a lot of work in the decades that this disease has been here to identify and select and breed for resistant tree species. So western white pine, they've been breeding long enough that there are resistant trees available. Sugar pine, I know this year they're doing some 40-year evaluations of outplantings of sugar pine that were established to verify resistance and the durability of resistance of the sugar pine. And most recently, there's been much more attention being paid to white bark pine, a high elevation pine species that's also susceptible to the blister rust and facing challenges from climate change because especially in the warmer weather, the lodgepole pine that's found at elevations just below and adjacent to the white bark pine, the lodgepole pine suffering from mountain pine beetle, and those mountain pine beetles are spilling over and also attacking weakened or diseased white bark pine. I guess I put this website here that's really small and difficult to see, but I could forward that or put it in the chat, but it describes the status of the seed collections and the availability of improved seed through the Dorina Genetic Resources Center. But a lot of work being done, especially now with white bark pine, to survey it, identify its status and collect seed that could be used in resistance trials. Sudden oak death caused by Phytophthora ramorum is a very widespread invasive disease that's found in quite widespread in Northern California. In Oregon, there's only a small area of Southwest Oregon, Curry County, that's infested. It infests a wide variety of plants, but the most sort of urgent issue for forestry is that it kills tan oak. And so right now there's a really aggressive slow the spread program that's active in Southwest Oregon to identify dead tan oak, which the picture shows gray are tan oak trees that have been dead for a long time, or at least a year. Red indicates tan oak that have just recently died and still have their dead leaves on them. And then the green are other tree species. So, but this really aggressive slow the spread program in Oregon that involves detecting dead tan oak quickly and going to the area, removing the infested trees, burning piles of the infested material, and following up to make sure the stumps don't resprout and reinfest the area, has been really successful at keeping this disease in just a small part of Curry County. There's not only that's provided time for collecting acorns of the tan oak to initiate some selective breeding programs, it's also protected industries and especially the port at Coos Bay from being involved with other quarantines from other countries and other states. A new insect, just to mention quickly, is the Mediterranean oak borer. The insect's called Xyloborus monographus, and it's an ambrosia beetle. Ambrosia beetles don't feed on trees. They tunnel into the sapwood of trees, the outer rings, and inoculate those tunnels with fungi. And then they lay eggs there, and the baby beetles feed on this fungus. The problem with this Xyloborus monographus is it came from Europe. It's been spread several places around the world, but its fungus that it carries is pathogenic. Rafflesia montitii is actually a tree killer. So it initially attacks trees at the top of the crown and inoculates them with this fungus, and then the crown dies back down to the main stem and eventually kills the trees. It's been very actively killing valley oak and blue oak in California, in Napa and Sonoma counties. It hasn't been, those are white oak species, and it hasn't been found in the wilds in Oregon white oak, Quercus garryana, which is an issue for California, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. But in a lab, this fungus, Rafflesia montitii, is pathogenic to Oregon white oak. In the last few years, this map is produced by the Oregon Department of Agriculture. This upper purple line is the Columbia River, and these are Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas, and Marion counties. Recently, last year, it was trapped with several dozen beetles collected in these areas. So the beetles probably widespread. It hasn't been found infesting trees, but there must be some trees out there that it's associated with. So this is an up and coming invasive species that in its home range, it infests weakened trees, but we don't really know what its impacts will be to Oregon white oak when it becomes more widespread here. Another beetle to describe is the California five-spined ips. Ips beetles are a genus of bark beetles, and the ips beetles tend to infest slash and the weakened tops and individual branches of many pine species. Now, until 2010, on the lower left-hand corner, this beetle was not known to exist above the Oregon border, but in about 2010, there were a lot of dead trees being observed along the Columbia Gorge around Hood River and Skamania County. And investigations indicated that that was the California five-spined ips. And so just along the other side of the Columbia River from its known range wasn't that big a deal, but the Washington Department of Natural Resources and the Forest Service started trapping for it. And by 2018, they'd located it in all the places where these red boxes occur. And these were just trapped specimens. They didn't observe any significant tree killing in the areas, but this range appears to have expanded, probably due to climate change and hotter, drier summers creating more tree stress.
Karen, this is a 4-minute warning.
Thank you. Last summer, there were dead trees reported at Fort Lewis, in Renton, and in Bothell, and those beetles were found in those trees. So it is capable of killing trees. It has moved substantially north, and it'll become an issue for especially pine management on the west side of the Cascades that we haven't had to be really rigorous about in the past. The last insect to mention is the emerald ash borer, Agrylus planopennis. It's native to Eastern Asia and is a wood-boring beetle, but it tends to stay at the surface of the wood and only going in about an inch or an inch and a half right before it pupates. The larvae tunnel back and forth in it, making S-shaped galleries, which girdle the trees and kill them. It infests ash and other members of the olive family. Here's a picture of where it's known from in the United States. It was detected in 2002 in the Lake States, in the Midwest. And a couple of years ago, it was detected in Denver. It probably originally got here with shipping materials, dunnage that's used to brace shipping loads, pallets. It can also fly. Usually the beetles only fly a couple of miles. So the most widespread spread is usually by humans, especially movement of firewood is suspected.
2 minutes, Karen?
Okay. The places that it's infested in the East Coast, there's been 95% or more ash mortality, over 100 million trees killed since the 1990s. It's never been successfully eradicated. And last June, it was detected in Forest Grove, Oregon, in some landscape trees adjacent to an elementary school. The issue with emerald ash borer that's really important, it's going to be a huge issue for urban planted ash trees, but we also have a native ash, Fraxinus latifolia, that's Oregon's and Washington's only native ash tree. It's really important as a riparian tree and habitat for threatened and endangered species, shading and keeping the streams cool, and it's important as a cultural resource. I'm going to give another talk completely about emerald ash borer on April 18th. So I'm just going to flip through these last slides, but there are surveys occurring now. Visual surveys are going on now. The visual surveys to date have yielded that most of the activity is still right around the town of Forest Grove, Oregon, which is about 20 miles west of Portland and about 15 miles west of the Oregon-Washington border. And there's trapping that's going to get started again in the next couple of months. There are chemical treatments to protect individual ash trees. There are biocontrol agents that can be released and are going to be released this spring in Oregon to help dampen the population of emerald ash borer. But these biocontrols are not able to prevent essentially the full killing of pretty much every mature ash tree on the landscape. So depending on how close the emerald ash borer is to you, it's important to understand what ash you have, what ecological functions you want to preserve, and costs you want to have mitigated. It's important to make a plan to protect important trees, prepare for revegetation and reduce hazards, and monitor to determine when the emerald ash borer gets to your property. There are some direct control and strategies for slowing ash mortality, but it's really important. Now's the time before this insect escapes from the immediate forest grove area. Now's the time to start thinking and strategizing. So tune in more on April 18th, please. And thank you for your attention so far.
Thanks so much, Karen. That was a great overview of some priority